Three-time NBA MVP Moses Malone has died. He was found dead in a hotel room in Norfolk, Virginia. The cause of death was not immediately released, but police say there was no indication of foul play.
If you clicked this video because you saw attacked wife in the thumbnail, you already know we're going somewhere dark. Moses Malone was the chairman of the boards, a three-time MVP who changed basketball by jumping straight from high school to the pros. But behind the trophies was a forgotten history the basketball world ignored. Behind the cheers was a man accused of terrorizing his family, police affidavits, restraining orders, death threats, and a 1993 arrest that shatters the perfect story we've been told. Hey, if you're watching this right now, please use the hype feature and give this video some love. Your hype helps this story reach people who need to understand the truth about our celebrated legends. Give it a hype right now. Moses was born in 1955 in Petersburg, Virginia, into a world defined by poverty and instability. His father was an alcoholic who couldn't function or stay in the home, so when Moses was only 2 years old, his mother made the difficult decision to force him out. That early separation meant Moses was raised primarily by his mother, Mary, a woman who never finished past the 5th grade and worked as a store clerk to provide for her son. Poverty, instability, and the absence of a father figure created something obsessive and relentless within young Moses. He didn't go to playgrounds for recreation like most kids. He went because the court was where he could control something, where he could be powerful in a world where he had no power. By the time the sun went down, most kids were eating dinner with their families, but Moses was still on the court, shooting, rebounding, working until 2 in the morning. He wore out a pair of PF Flyers every 5 days because he was putting more wear on those shoes than any teenager should. His mother couldn't afford to replace them that quickly, but Moses didn't stop. He couldn't stop. Something deep inside drove him to push harder than everyone else, to dominate and prove he was more relentless than anyone around him. By high school, he was 6 feet 10, a giant among teenagers. His senior year, he averaged 36 points and 26 rebounds per game, blocking 12 shots every single night. His team won 50 consecutive games and back-to-back state titles in 1973 and 1974. Over 200 colleges recruited him, including some of the biggest programs in the country. But Moses struggled with literacy, a direct consequence of his limited education growing up. He signed with the University of Maryland and initially felt it was the right move. Then he showed up to campus and attended only 2 days of classes. 2 days. That was enough to convince him that college wasn't for him. At 19 years old, Moses signed a 5-year contract with the Utah Stars of the ABA worth $1 million. It was groundbreaking and controversial. It changed the sport forever and forced the NBA to create the one-and-done rule decades later, in 2005, to prevent similar high school jumps. But here's the crucial part. By securing wealth and power before turning 20, Moses bypassed all the oversight that college provides. He had no advisors, no structure, no time to develop emotional maturity. He had absolute autonomy and millions of dollars while still a teenager. Moses became a force in professional basketball. After winning 2 consecutive MVP awards with the Houston Rockets, establishing himself as the dominant big man in the league, he was traded to the Philadelphia 76ers in 1982 to be the missing piece in their quest to finally defeat the dominant Los Angeles Lakers dynasty. When he arrived in Philadelphia, something immediately shifted in the locker room atmosphere. He brought an aggression that was almost violent, a physical intensity that went beyond what was considered normal basketball competition. He believed in himself with an arrogance born from years of domination, and he made a bold public prediction that the Sixers would sweep their way through the entire postseason. Not just win, not just advance, but sweep. That meant 4 games, 0 losses, all the way to the championship. His exact words were faux, faux, faux. Faux means 4. He predicted 4 consecutive playoff series sweeps before losing even a single game. The prediction was remarkable in its audacity. The Sixers eventually lost 1 game to the Milwaukee Bucks, so the prediction needed revision to faux, fee, faux, and that's exactly what got inscribed on their championship rings forever. But the point was unmistakably made. Moses believed he was unstoppable, and when you're 6 feet 10 inches tall and built like a physical specimen, and you've been practicing since 2 in the morning, your entire life since childhood, that confidence isn't entirely unreasonable. The 1983 NBA Finals became the moment that proved him absolutely right. He went directly up against Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, widely considered the greatest player in basketball at that time. Kareem was called the captain, a reference to his commanding presence, and he had won multiple MVP awards and championship rings. But Moses didn't just beat him, he physically dominated him in a way that felt almost cruel to witness. Using a unique and controversial technique where he would tip his own missed shots back against the glass multiple times before the opposing team could get into position, Moses secured a record-breaking number of offensive rebounds that inflated his rebound totals. In the four-game sweep, Moses out-rebounded Kareem by a staggering margin of 72 total rebounds, compared to Kareem's 30. Moses was pulling down 18 rebounds per game, while Kareem averaged just 7.5. Moses finished the finals with 25.8 points per game compared to Kareem's 23.5. The physical dominance was total and complete, and he won the finals Emmy of IP award. He was unquestionably the greatest big man of the early 1980s, and everyone in the basketball world acknowledged it. But here's what mattered most. This same pattern of disregarding boundaries and pushing through any obstacle in his way started showing up in his personal life off the court. The same intensity that made him untouchable in the paint was manifesting as something darker when he was home. Moses married Alfreda Gill during the height of his fame, and the relentless drive that made him great at basketball became cruelty and infidelity within that marriage. The contrast between public legend and private storm grew progressively wider and wider. In September 1991, Alfreda filed for divorce from Moses, citing irreconcilable differences, adultery, and cruelty. The term cruelty, used in legal documents, typically refers to serious physical or emotional abuse. The separation was bitter and contentious. By June 1992, the situation had escalated to such a serious level that a court formally issued a restraining order against Moses to protect Alfreda from his unwanted presence. A restraining order represents a judicial determination that a person poses a threat and is dangerous enough that the law must physically separate them from their intended victim. In October 1992, after a protracted legal battle, the divorce was finally finalized. But for Moses Malone, a legal document didn't carry the same weight as it does for ordinary people. The restraining order was just paper to him. On January 22, 1993, Alfreda filed an affidavit describing a terrifying situation. An affidavit is a sworn statement made under oath, carrying legal weight and criminal penalties for perjury. She alleged that her ex-husband Moses had been systematically stalking her, tracking her movements, and showing up at places where she explicitly did not want him to be. But the allegations went far beyond simple stalking. She alleged that he had explicitly threatened to kill her. These weren't casual threats or angry words said in the heat of an argument that could be dismissed or explained away. These were specific, documented, serious allegations of murder threats against his ex-wife. She also reported that Moses had illegally entered her home in League City, Texas, and deliberately damaged her property during these violent invasions. The worst part of this situation was that their two young sons were living in that house with their mother. Moses II was only 12 years old and Michael was just 8 years old. Both children were forced to witness their father's rage, the boundary-breaking behavior, and the terrifying threats directed at their mother. On January 29, 1993, Moses Malone was arrested while driving in Galveston, Texas. The charge was violating a peace bond that had been established to protect Alfreda. A peace bond is a legal mechanism where someone must post a cash guarantee as collateral, essentially money they put down to prove to the court that they will follow the court's specific rules and orders. The court had ordered Moses to post a cash guarantee that he would stop all contact with his ex-wife, that he would cease coming to her home, and that he would stop the stalking and death threats immediately. But he violated that bond, breaking that agreement, which directly led to his arrest. He was taken to the Galveston County Jail and held until he could post $5,000 in bond to secure his release. $5,000 represented serious money, though for someone who had earned millions playing professional basketball, it was something he could handle relatively easily. In 2016, only a year after Moses died, his son Moses Jr. became the central figure in a violent legal drama that mirrored the chaos of his childhood. Moses Jr. filed a civil lawsuit against James Harden, a star player for the Houston Rockets, alleging that Harden had orchestrated a violent robbery and assault against him. The incident occurred outside V Live, a Houston nightclub where Moses Jr. was jumped by a group of men led by Darian Blount, who worked as an employee at the club. The reason for the attack was absolutely shocking. Moses Jr. had posted on Facebook criticizing the price of Harden's basketball camp, saying it cost $249 and was unaffordable for inner-city youth. That one criticism apparently triggered violence. During the attack, Blount allegedly told Moses Jr. that he had disrespected James Harden and needed to be punished for that disrespect. The assailants struck him with weapons, kicked him in the face repeatedly, and forcibly ripped diamond earrings from his ears, stealing jewelry valued at $15,000 to $50,000. The violence was brutal and connected directly to a social media post about a basketball camp. James Harden won what's called a summary judgment in the civil case because there was no evidence linking him to the physical attack itself. The court determined there was no meeting of the minds between Harden and the attackers. But Moses Jr. claimed afterward that he was living in fear and filed police reports in both Houston and Los Angeles regarding death threats he received following the lawsuit. The situation underscored the volatility within the Malone family's life. What's even more disturbing is that during the legal proceedings, allegations surfaced that Moses Jr. had been conducting a memorabilia scam. He was allegedly defrauding other former NBA players in sports memorabilia deals, using his father's name and the goodwill associated with it to conduct fraudulent transactions. Players like Allen Iverson and Walt Bellamy were caught up in these deals. Other former players, including Cedric Toney and Dale Ellis, won legal judgments against Moses Jr. for failing to pay for memorabilia they purchased. His attorneys noted that he had specifically leveraged the reputation built by his father to conduct these fraudulent scams, essentially using the Malone name to establish false credibility. This pattern in Moses Jr.'s life suggests something deeply troubling. The dark storm brewing in the Malone household in 1993, the chaos and instability and disregard for boundaries, had long-term ripple effects that would affect his children throughout their entire lives. They learned by watching. They learned that power could intimidate. They learned rules could be broken without serious consequences. They learned that if you had enough status, the system would let you get away with things. Now I want to address an important confusion. People often mix up Moses Malone with Karl Malone, another legendary player with a completely different dark history. Karl Malone was a power forward for the Utah Jazz, and when he was 20 years old, he impregnated a 13-year-old girl named Gloria Bell, a 13-year-old child. That's statutory rape. Karl fought paternity claims for years and refused to acknowledge his biological son until the boy was 17. Some people assign Karl's crimes to Moses. They mix them up and suddenly Moses is accused of something he didn't do. But correcting this mix-up doesn't exonerate Moses Malone. The 1993 arrest for threatening to kill his wife, the stalking, and illegal entry are public record. These crimes are distinct from Karl's but no less significant in impact on Moses's family. Moses's failings were domestic violence and physical aggression, a direct extension of his boundary-breaking persona in basketball. Moses Malone died on September 13, 2015, at age 60. He was found unresponsive in a hotel room in Norfolk, Virginia, where he had traveled for a charity golf tournament. The medical examiner determined the cause was hypertensive and atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease. In his final years, Moses complained about irregular heartbeats and wore a heart monitor. He died like many big men of his generation, cut down in his late 50s and early 60s by heart failure. His final years included a relationship with Leah Nash, whom he met in 2006. They had a son named Micah, age 6 when Moses died, but Moses and Leah never married or lived together. Even in his final relationship, Moses kept his personal life fragmented. The NBA celebrated Moses's career statistics: 27,409 points and 16,212 rebounds. Incredible numbers. Tributes talked about his pioneer spirit, how he broke the system and paved the way for Kobe and LeBron. But the tributes ignored the messy, aggressive personal decline that defined his post-retirement life. They ignored restraining orders. They ignored peace bonds. They ignored affidavits from his ex-wife describing stalking and death threats. They ignored that a man who achieved athletic immortality also damaged the people closest to him. This is the core failure of professional sports. We celebrate icons so thoroughly we become blind to their flaws. We let admiration for on-court achievements overshadow off-court crimes. Moses Malone changed basketball forever, that's true. He showed you could break the system and succeed. He won championships and MVP awards, but he also broke the safety and peace of his family. He was a pioneer in some ways and a predator in others. He was the chairman of the boards, but he violated boundaries that should never be crossed. The truth matters more than the trophy. The victims matter more than the legacy. We can remember the greatness while refusing to ignore the harm and destruction. We can acknowledge that Moses did incredible things in basketball while also holding him accountable for terrible things he did at home. That's not redemption. It's honesty. It's looking at the complete picture instead of only the parts that make us feel good. Moses Malone changed basketball forever. That's part of his legacy. But he also taught his children that boundaries don't matter when you have power and money, that legal documents can be ignored, that you can do whatever you want if you're famous and talented enough. That's the other part of his legacy, the one still affecting his family and those who cross paths with the Malone name. When we remember Moses, we need to remember all of it. The darkness matters just as much as the dominance. The truth demands nothing less. If you made it this far, you understand why this story matters so much today. It's not just about one basketball player. It's about how we treat our legends, how we protect victims, and what we choose to remember and forget. Please like this video, subscribe for more investigations, and comment your thoughts on how sports should handle complicated legacies. This conversation matters.